10 किस्म के जो हमारे कमेंटेटर हैं ऑन फॉरेन अफेयर्स, खासतौर पे जो कनाडा और अमेरिका का जो सिस्टम सारा हमारा बीच में भी चल रहा है, ट्रेड के जो खतरे चल रहे हैं, टैरिफ्स चल रहे हैं, उनके ऊपर बात करने के लिए नॉर्थ अमेरिका में हो क्या रहा है, हमारे साथ बात करेंगे डॉक्टर मार्क मेरोविट्स। ये हैं स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ न्यूयॉर्क मैरीटाइम कॉलेज के साथ रिलेटेड। तो डॉक्टर मार्क जो हैं वो बड़े प्यारे हैं, वैसे भी बड़ी मोहब्बत से हमसे बात करते हैं, मुझे डांटते भी हैं बीच बीच में, लेकिन जो है आज हम उनसे फिर से जुड़ रहे हैं, बात कर रहे हैं। हेलो मार्क, हाउ आर यू?
Okay, how about you?
Very, very well. We love you, really. I was just telling my listeners that you scold me in between also, but we love you so much. You are such an expert. Okay, so
the feeling is mutual.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Dr. Mark, my first question definitely would be, what do you think after 1 month, what is going to happen? These tariffs between Canada and US, are they going to intensify? Is Mr. Trump going to put some more tariffs? And do you see Canada, retaliating with the retaliatory tariffs? So we will start with this and then we will move to North America and Europe.
Well, look, the world is very, very fraught. I think, look, Trump is a game changer. We've talked about this before. Canada cannot withstand the American economy, and certainly not in its present situation. So I do think that, taking a hard line on the side of Canada against the United States is a foolish idea. And again, I'm not a Canadian, but I've spent a lot of my time, I was active in an organization in New York called the Canadian Institute of International Affairs. I was the president of the New York branch. My first trips to Canada and any plane was on Air Canada. So I have a lot of affinity for Canada, represented as a lawyer, Canadian oil and gas companies and also other companies, investing, cross-investing. So I have a fair knowledge of it. I would say that Canada's economy cannot withstand an onslaught against the United States, especially in the present situation where you have an uncertain political future. And I think, if I may say, and then you'll forgive me as an American for being hypercritical, but I think Trudeau has really mismanaged this. He's mismanaged it. To get up and say, you give me a tariff, I'll give you a tariff, is not the right approach, especially when you're a weak political leader. And the one thing that Trump is very good at is identifying weakness. And he really did identify Trudeau's weakness. He's a weak leader. He shouldn't have prorogued the parliament until March. He shouldn't have left uncertainty. He should have called elections straight away and get the Canadian House in order. And I do think that's for the benefit of the United States. Look, the big issue for the United States is Mexico, not Canada. Let's be realistic. And even on the drugs and so forth, I mean, that's just not the issue. The issue is Mexico. Canada, I believe the situation will straighten itself out.
Okay, Dr. Mark, actually the thing is that it's not only the Prime Minister. The feeling is mutual throughout the country, means the premiers themselves also think that US has, or Mr. Trump's administration has, given them a deadly blow. So it is not only the Prime Minister, and then this is one thing, and then second thing that you said that he should have called for elections right away. He actually resigned. So he resigned, and the Liberal Party wanted a leader before they could go to elections. There are going to be early elections, most probably by March or something, although they happen in in fall, but this time maybe earlier. So once they have a leader in place, they might, go for elections. Okay, this is one thing. Yes. Second thing, Dr. Mark, is that a lot of changes are taking place now in Europe with this Ukraine war talk and all of this. Europe seems to be quite upset with the approach that Mr. Trump has taken. He has excluded them. Even today they were holding talk in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and they clearly said, even Marco Rubio and others, that they are going to talk directly to Russia. They are not including European Union. They are not seeking their guidance. They are not talking to Ukraine. So how come do you think this deal is going to be so successful?
I wanted to say something further to your point about Canada. I think that it was not just proroguing the parliament, and yes, they want a Liberal Party leader. I think that was very selfish of Trudeau and the Liberal Party to do that for the country. But again, I'm not Canadian, so I don't have a stake in this, and I don't have a right to be critical, except as a friend. As a friend.
Yeah.
As a friend of Canada, I'm deeply disappointed. I love Canada. I love being in Canada. It's so nice there. It's beautiful there. It's much too cold in Montreal. It was so cold. I never was so cold in my life. New York is very cold now, but Montreal, oh boy, that's something unbelievable. You never really feel that. But it's absolutely beautiful there. It's a beautiful country. And it's one that, as I told you, Americans love Canadians and vice versa. So that never changes. But when you deal with Trump, is not only what we're sitting on right now is a international roller coaster. And I would say that, Europe is a good example. But let's be frank about Europe. Europe is moribund. It is dysfunctional. It doesn't work. The Europeans have not done enough. They talk about a European army going in the UK. Is this a joke? How many soldiers and naval personnel does the UK have today? The UK is a minimum size of what it was in World War II. Canadians, British, Americans, Europeans fighting in the war. Yes, true. And British have been allies, Canadians of the United States. That's true. But militarily, the United States is the behemoth, is the powerful nation in the world. It's a superpower, and a democratic superpower. And these countries in Europe, France in particular, and Britain and so forth, are dysfunctional and not working and internally falling apart. I mean, this is not a surprise. You have Germany having a far-right, party, which Vance seems to like. Okay, I don't get that. But, again, European politics is in upheaval right now. And in terms of Ukraine, let's be real about what's going on here. Now, some people in Europe have analogized this to the Munich conference when Chamberlain went to meet with Hitler and they decided to carve up Czechoslovakia. Essentially, Ukraine, I don't know if that's a good analogy or a bad analogy, but essentially Ukraine is not in the meeting, Europe is not in the meetings, and the superpowers, essentially Russia, U.S., are having a meeting, of all places in Saudi Arabia. Can you imagine this? I mean, who can believe this? And they're going to end the war. And how are they going to end the war? Is Russia going to withdraw from Ukraine? I mean, not a chance. Not a chance. And maybe they'll just withdraw from where they are in small pieces that Ukrainians took, might stay or might not. But peace at any price, or as Chamberlain said in World War II when he met with Hitler, peace in our time. We have peace in our time. Well, this is what we're talking about. So Europe is not in there because Europe is not functional. And this is very bad. I say this is very, very bad. The United States making a deal like this. Again, I do. President Trump said when he campaigned the Ukraine war would end. He didn't say how. He said it would end. And it would never have happened had he been president. I don't know if that's true. The fact of the matter is it looks like it's probably going to end, maybe, somehow. But then does Russia keep Crimea? Does it keep that part of Georgia that it took? Does it keep the Luhansk and Donetsk provinces? I mean, and they've lost. I heard the numbers today. I'm trying to figure them out. Maybe I don't know. They already lost, maybe this year, 500,000 soldiers? Is that possible? I mean, this is catastrophic, and it's replete with Russian atrocities. So from the point of view of not having a war and stopping the atrocities, that's very good. How you solve it, you don't want to solve it like Afghanistan and just end it that way and leave these people in charge and let them keep the land. And what happens going forward if Russia wants to start up a war again, if they perceive American weakness? So we're in a bad situation. We have the situation in the Middle East too. We can talk about that too. That one is another one. We have Syria now in flux. So the whole world is we're all sitting on a roller coaster, and we're holding on to the roller coaster and going for a ride. And here's the problem: we don't know where it's going.
Yeah, okay. Now that you have you have just mentioned Syria, so I'm very tempted to ask you about Mr. Trump's proposal for Gaza. He says that I'm going to turn this into the Riviera of Middle East, but all the Palestinians need to leave. Now, how cruel that can be, that the people of the land, you are telling them to it is just like telling the Americans, get out of your country so that we rebuild it. How is he himself going to feel about it if somebody says that? So this rhetoric that they are really heating up, what do you have to say about it?
I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think it's an analogy telling Americans to get out. The problem you have there, now Egypt has come up, and you see, this is again Trump doing his thing. He says, Riviera of the Middle East, all the Palestinians have to leave. And then everybody says, no, no, no. And then Egypt says, I'm going to make a deal where we're going to rebuild Gaza and Palestinians can remain while we rebuild. Maybe that's what Trump had in mind. I don't know what he had in mind, but he did shake it up. Shaking up. This is what Trump does. So if he can get that done. The reason for the thinking about having everybody leave was to eliminate Hamas, take it out, take out the tunnels, release and get all the hostages out. We just had the news that the little babies who were taken with their mother were killed, and they were kidnapped alive. This is an atrocity of such a proportion that one cannot wrap their head around it. I mean, it's impossible to accept that human beings would behave in such a bestial and disgusting fashion. But this is what you're dealing with. So they have to be finished. Hamas must be finished, and it cannot be allowed to continue. And the Palestinian people are entitled to have a nice life, but how can they have a nice life with Hamas? They can't. So, again, he shakes it up and kind of like shakes it up and sees what happens. And if Egypt comes up with this proposal to rebuild Gaza, I think that could be a good outcome. I don't know how you feel about it, but it sounds like that's a good idea, rebuilding it. But you can't rebuild it in the context where Hamas remains there in their tunnels and rebuilds and rearms and tries to do more attacks and more atrocities, and the hostages remain. That cannot be. That is not a starter for the United States, certainly. But yeah, no, I hear your point and your criticism. I mean, it's well taken, but, when he comes up with this thing, people he says things, and then, he said, I know I can only run for 2 terms, but maybe I'll run for 3 terms.
Yeah.
I want to have Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I just spoke with Governor Trudeau last night. I mean, he just says stuff, and you just have to sit there, and you just have to say to yourself and hold out your chair and say, well, in a way, it's kind of like the expression in German Schadenfreude. It's kind of like, it's so like, you cringe, but you laugh because it's effective to make, and I think why it's effective is it sort of gets us, we're talking about all this. Mm-hmm. Now, otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. Yes. We talk about it, everybody's talking about it. Everybody around the world is talking about all these issues.
Yeah. So like we used to say, Hail Hitler, we are going to now say, Hail Trump.
Yes, I don't appreciate, and not that you meant it in any way, but I don't like these analogies when we make analogies that he's a dictator and Hitler and all that. That is really something.
That's the way he's talking in the world. He says, I will take Greenland, I will take Panama Canal, I will take Gaza.
I don't agree with the analogy again to Hitler, because Hitler was a mass murderer who committed genocide, and Trump is not a committer of genocide. Now, the thing about Panama and Greenland, okay, so let's just deal with that one because you mentioned it. Greenland is very interesting. If you look, there is a strategic advantage. The United States has a base there. The Russians and Chinese traverse that area, and as it melts, as it melts, they get more ability to traverse that area. It's a strategic danger to Canada, if I may, to mention to my friends in Canada, and to the United States. It's dangerous to have the Russians and Chinese traversing that area. And actually, again, I don't know if we talked about this the last time we had our conversation, if they buy Greenland from the Greenlanders, from the middle people. They each will get $1 million in cash for the purchase, and that's never happening because that's not the point. The point is to make a more binding treaty with Greenland to allow the United States to have more, and I suppose Canada as well, to have more access to Greenland from a strategic point of view. As far as Panama is concerned, Panama, I watched the hearings in Congress about this, and they actually delve into these issues to try. But Panama Canal, you might recall, the United States built it, and many, I think thousands or hundreds of workers died of malaria and other diseases building it. This is something Teddy Roosevelt wanted to do. He built it, and it's very, very important in terms of being able to traverse and not have to go all the way around when in shipping and so forth. But the Chinese are deeply embedded in Panama. Now, that was never the agreement that the United States made when they turned it back to Panama, when Jimmy Carter, in his inimitable wisdom or lack thereof, he was a great president after he left. But when he was a president, he was involved in the Iran hostage crisis and Panama Canal, giving it back. If you give back the Panama Canal, you don't give it back so China can take control of the Panama Canal on both sides. The danger there is if there ever were a tension with China, China could close the canal. So when you first, again, this schadenfreude, you kind of sit back and you say, Panama, we're going to take the Panama Canal. We're going to take it back. And everybody sits back and says, what is he talking about? But then when you look into it a little bit, and after you've laughed or cringed or whatever it is, and you look into it and you say, wait a minute, there's something to this. And that doesn't mean we're going to take back the Panama Canal, but we're going to try to, I think, the United States, to eliminate the Chinese influence there. And I think that's good for everyone in Latin America, in South America.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mark. Well, in the last 40 years, U.S. has fought so many wars. China has not fought any war, zero wars. So I don't know what Chinese influence or what Chinese, scares or Chinese scare that they have to their national security. But that was very, very nice talking to you. And we are going to connect with you now once again. This is all the time that we have today. We'll trouble you once again when we have these issues cropping up, which are, in fact, every day. So we'll connect soon, but bye for now.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
यानी जनाब अब